Hello everybody and welcome back. And in the previous video we coded the launcher thread function, which actually checks out the number of threads running, and it also starts a thread on our class request performer, which we need to actually code right now. Now that class will take an argument of thread, and we need to code the part of the code in that class which will actually run the attack itself. So we will do that up here, so let us code it right here. We will call it class request performer, and it will take the input of thread. So basically it will take an option as thread. Make sure to call it the same as you called it right here. So request performer needs to be the same name as it is right here. So all we have to do right now, as if every class we actually code, we need to set the function in it, which will specify the variables that we will use in this class. They all need to have the prefix of self dot and then the name of the variable. So let us see how we can do that. So def underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and here we pass the self argument as in the every class, and we need to specify the three arguments that we actually passed in our request performer class, which is name, user, and URL. After that, in this function we need to initiate all of these variables. So first of all we will do the thread to be thread.init, since that is the argument that the class takes itself, and we need to put the self in the brackets right here. So this is a little bit of new syntax for you, but you will get used to it. The one that we do know is the self.password. We need to set that to be name.split. Whoops. Since name actually corresponds to the password and the user is the username that we will specify. Now you might be asking, why are we using the name.split option? Well, basically the password that we actually read from our file, they all have the /n at the end of their word. Now the /n in programming language actually represents a new line. So we need to actually split our password or our text or string or however you want to call it from that character minus or /n, which represents new line. So we can do that with the .split option, and then we can just open up the brackets and in the double quotes type here / or \n. Then close the double quotes, and in order for our program to actually know which part of the split we want to use, whether the first or the second one, we need to specify the first one, which we can specify with the open square brackets 0. Since once you split let me just show you right here how that would look like. So basically you have a password called test, and then since it is having a new line, it has the characters \n. We did the split, so we split these two, and we want to select to use the first part, which is part right here. And since we know that counting in programming starts 0, we specify here test, which is basically representing this 0 right here. So let me just delete this now, so our program can actually run. And right now, since we initiated the password what to be, now we need to initiate the username. So self.username will just be user, which we specified right here. And also the self.url will be URL. And then let's print the actual password that we are using currently. So let us do this with a dash, then plus self.password, for example, and then plus dash. So right now we coded the init function in our class, which is basically hosting or having our variables right here. And what we want to do is finally call the run function, which will actually run the attack itself on our target. So how can we do that? We can actually name a function, make sure that that function actually belongs to this class right here, since we will actually use the variables from here in that class. If you code the function to be right here, it will not belong to that class and we will not be able to run our program. So def run, and run will take self as an argument since it belongs to our class. And basically we need to add the global hit variable that we coded in the previous videos. Now the reason why we need to add it is because right now we will check if the global hit is equal to 0 or 1. If it's equal to 1, basically that means the password didn't work. If we get the status code of 200 for our program, which means we actually successfully loaded and logged into a page, we will set hit to be 0 and then it will terminate our program. So let me show you what I mean by that, in case you don't understand it. We just remove this selection right here. We need to select that we use the global hit command, variable, and we need to check as usual if hit equals to 1. So right now we will actually run our program itself. As I said, we need to use the requests library since it allows us to send the packet with the username and password and with the basic authentication with just one line. So right here we want to run the try and accept option as in every other basically command that we use or function that we use. And right here we will need to code our request. So let's name our request to be just R, and we use the library requests and we use .get. Now why do we use .get? Well, basically if you remember from our perps with inspecting of our basic authentication, we were sending a get request while sending the basic authentication with username and password. That's why we here also need to use get option. So in the get option we need to specify basically two things, or three things technically. We need to specify the URL to which we are sending the packet, and we also need to specify the authentication, which will actually have the username and password in brackets. So how do we do that? Well, simply just type here the first argument or option to be self.url. We use the self, remember that we use the self because we are still in the class. And then we need to specify the authentication, so authentication right here, which will actually equal to open brackets and then self.username and also self.password. Then we close two brackets since we have two brackets open. So all we have to specify is this, and we can send, or we can actually check if the packet has received a status code of 200, which means we actually successfully loaded the page, or it didn't. So we will run a simple if-else command. So if r.statuscode, which is a function in request library that allows us to check the status code of a get request, and if it equals to 200, that means that the password is correct and that we actually guessed the password. So what we need to do is specify here hit to be 0 so we can actually terminate our code. As you remember in this part right here, in the launcher thread function, we were also checking if hit equals to 1. Now if hit equals to 0, this will not actually run anymore. So all we have to do right now is actually go back up. Let me just go and find where we stopped. So it is right here. So if hit equals to 0, we found password, so that's what we want to actually print. Oops, no, we actually, if our status code equals to 200, we set the hit to be equal to 0, and we want to print the password. So print plus password found, and then let's set that password to be basically let's add a string to it, which will be the string of our password that we used for this current iteration of this loop. So self.password. This means we found successfully the password, and all we want to do right now is actually sys.exit. So exit the program. Else, in case our status code isn't 200, we want to run the else, and we actually want to print or let's do it like this. We can do it like this, plus self.password plus is not valid. So this will basically print these two exclamation marks, then it will add our current password, and it will add also after the password is not valid. So after we check that the password isn't valid, what we want to do is actually remove the thread from the counter. And our counter is basically the I variable that we specify in the launcher thread function. So how can we do that? We can do it simply with this. So 0 equals I of 0 minus 1. The same that we specified here to adding to the counter, which was plus 1, we need to now remove it from the counter, which minus 1. And here after we try this, we need to take any exception, which we can do exception and then comma E, and then we can actually print that error in case that error shows up. So basically this is it for this program. This should actually work, I believe. In the next video we will test the program itself, and then we will actually add something else as a help option in order to print to the user our available options. So hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I see you in the next one where we will be testing this program, and take care. Bye.